Powering on. Now here's a little bit of a revelation. I skipped forward a little bit. With the power adapter in there, we got the battery light charging. When we move it the slightest bit, it goes off. Once we jiggle it and let it sit, it goes back on. The computer powers on. Everything seems to be fine. So I'm going to tell you exactly what happened. What's wrong with the power jack is the inside tip of the power jack is very worn. The tip is bad, and the hole, which is on the inside of the power adapter, just became too big through all the use and damage and whatnot. And it's so big now that it's not making a connection when we plug it into the power jacks. The power jack's okay. It's just a loose power adapter now. So what we're going to do is replace the tip on the power adapter. So as you can see here, I cut off the tip of the power adapter, the existing tip, and I already stripped out the wires. We have one that's bare and one shielded with white shielding there. The white shielding one is the positive, the unshielded one's negative. This is a Radio Shack adapter plug, size N, which fits the gateway. We're going to mount it just like that. First thing we want to do, because I always forget to do this, is put some heat shrink tubing over the wire. I use a real thick one to cover the adapter plug, and then I use a thinner one under there to actually shield the wires, as you'll see shortly. Cut a decent size for that. I'm going to pull out the helping hands here, which will hold the wires for me while I do some soldering. The thick heat shrink tubing goes over first. And what I'm going to do now is sand down the posts on this adapter plug. See, these adapter plugs are meant to be plugged into a different adapter, not for wires to be soldered onto the bare pins there. But I found it makes a good repair on a power adapter. You could buy the Radio Shack adapter that it plugs into and then just solder the wires together, but I found the wires in that adapter that this adapter plug plugs into are a little too thin. So I like to go right from the power adapter wires right into the adapter plug. It's not pretty all the time, but it'll work. And you can see I scuffed up the pins there. We're going to put it in the helping hands. We're going to drop some solder on there. I always seem to get this a little out of frame, don't I? And there we have it. Solder is dropped on there securely because we scuffed it. The solder's not going to go anywhere. It's not going to break off. And what I'm going to do now is drop some solder on the ends of these wires. I call it tinning. Coat those wires in solder. And then when you're ready, we just touch those two wires to the adapter plug, heat them up, and solder should melt together on both ends. Now these wires are copper already. We don't have to sand the wires down. The solder is going to melt right into the copper. and there's a little too much exposed on one end. I'm going to cut it a little short. There might be some stray wires hanging off the edge. Just make sure everything's nice and clean. You don't want any short circuit here. And this is the product we're going to get. Camera doesn't like to focus unless I put my hand as a background, so there you have it. Now we need a little bit of a thinner wire to go under the wide heat shrink tubing. And you'll see how this works after we get everything on there. Well, we found a good piece of heat shrink tubing that'll fit over the inside wires there. Cut it to a reasonable size. Slip it on before you do any soldering to the adapter plug, otherwise it will not fit.